the Everything But Politics podcast.
All right. Episode 123 is officially live, and Super Bowl week is here. Joining us is Super Bowl MVP, Joe Flacco. It's nice to meet you, Joe. Welcome.
Yeah, glad to be here.
How was, we're from Indiana, Northwest Indiana, near Chicago. Your first season in Indiana, how did the Hoosier State treat you?
Oh, awesome. The people out there were great. Made some friends, had some great neighbors. It was all good. People are slightly different, probably overall. You get a little bit of a different feel than you do in Jersey, but there's good people everywhere. And that's one of the cool parts about this job is getting to live in a few different spots and meeting good people everywhere. So
Absolutely. And Joe, it's Super Bowl week. You obviously know how hard it is to make it to the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes just been unbelievable. What do you think is going to happen in this year's Super Bowl?
man, well, I've kind of said the Eagles were the team to beat in the NFC all year, just at least to myself, I did. They have a really good team. I mean, the physicality that they bring with up front on both sides of the ball, I think their offensive line really sticks out when you watch their games. I think that they're a really good football team. And the Chiefs, the interesting thing about them is I think they've had, even though they were 15-2 during the regular season, I think they've honestly had it pretty tough this year. They've played some pretty tough games. They're definitely battle tested. They've had to have a lot of, they've had to play every game this year pretty much within one score and show their grit. And I think that does something to a team. It definitely hardens you up a little bit and gives you the ability to operate under any circumstance. And I think when you get to this point in the playoffs, that's very important. And they've been through it before, so you can say whatever, but I do think that is important. And listen, I think the Eagles are very good. I think they're going to be hard to beat, but you can't pick against the Chiefs. I mean, they've just been doing it for so long, and anytime that game-changing plays come up for them, they're on the right side of it. They just get it done when they need to.
Well, that's the difference, right? And it's very reminiscent to the Patriots the last 2 decades prior to now. Even these close Chiefs games, they just find a way to win, even when they don't look good on either side of the ball.
I think it's one of those things that you probably don't talk. I mean, maybe people do talk about it. I don't know. But, good coaching, man, can make a big difference. And, I just think like Andy's been doing it for so long, but also the staff that he's put together, they've just done such a good job. And to have the right plays dialed up, offensive and defensive, when you need them the most, I think you got to give those guys a lot of credit. Obviously, you got to give credit to the guys that are out there executing them. But the fact that they're able to dial the stuff up that they do week in and week out, and put those guys in position to make those plays is pretty impressive.
Well, Joe, you also had a great coach with John Harbaugh. How important was he early on in your career in being a mentor and showing you what it takes to win the big games in the NFL?
Well, I think he had a vision for what a winning football team looks like. And not only did he have that vision of what it looks like, he was, he had a lot of conviction in what it took to get there, and you couldn't get him off that track. And I think that was very valuable. I didn't really know any other way when I came in the league, but here comes this guy coaching for the first time. And he had a very clear vision in his mind, what it took to become, a winning team and a winning organization. And, he didn't really let anybody get him off that track. And I think that's why you can see where he is and that team is today and where we were able to get to. And I think when you have that example for the first time you're in the NFL, it's definitely important to kind of get you in that mindset. And it gives you a little bit of a taste of what it takes to, to be successful in this league. It's funny that you mentioned John, because John was on those Eagles staffs that Andy Reid was on. So he kind of, I would say he learned from Andy, how to structure a training camp and an off season and practices and all those things. I think he probably learned from Andy a lot how to build a team and how to get a team ready for, the season.
So when you were watching this past Sunday, Championship Sunday, you saw the Eagles and the Commanders, and of course the Chiefs and Bills. What were your takeaways from those two games?
I was probably like everybody. I was probably up in the air about the Buffalo Kansas City game.
Mhm.
I kind of was leaning towards Kansas City coming out on top. Uh, I I enjoyed watching that game. You could see it. You could see the energy. Even if both defenses struggled at times to stop the other offense, there was a lot of energy, and like you could tell that it was a big time game. I mean, those they had good plans, and sometimes it got executed, sometimes it didn't. The other game, listen, I live in Eagles country here, and I'm in South Jersey. I'm 10 minutes from the stadium. Uh, it's crazy here, and it's going to be crazy for a couple of weeks. I kind of listen, no disrespect to the Commanders, but I kind of expected that game to go maybe not maybe not 8 touchdowns, but
Yeah.
um, if you would have told me that the Eagles were going to be playing the Commanders in the NFC Championship game at the beginning of the year, I would tell you that the Eagles were probably feeling pretty good about that. And that's the way it proved to be. I mean, obviously their season was a little bit different than I would have told you it was going to go in the beginning of the year. I mean, their team did a great job. I mean, they played good defense, obviously, to go 12-5 during the year. Their quarterback played well. They obviously started to believe that they were a good team. So a lot of credit to those guys. But Philadelphia, man, just like I talked about in the beginning of this, just the physicality that they bring up front, it's hard to beat that. That's what football is all about. Football still comes down to, dominating that line of scrimmage. And the
Mhm.
Eagles do that so well that they're tough to beat.
Do you think is if the Eagles are to win the Super Bowl, is it come down to Saquon Barkley?
No, 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 no. It comes down to it may look like it comes down to Saquon because he is really good. Don't get me wrong. He's a really good running back. He does make a difference. But their offensive line is what truly makes that team go. Just give it a look. I mean, look at the space they create for him, and look at the space that they create for Jalen back there in the pocket. And when you watch these games, the teams that can stop the run and get pressure on the quarterback are the teams that typically win the game. So um, that's why I just have so much confidence when that the Eagles have a really good chance in every game they're in, because I know just from watching them a little bit that they're going to usually do a good job of that. They're going to create space for their running back. They're going to create a lot of room in the pocket for Jalen, and they obviously have the receivers to go get open, especially when you give them a couple seconds back there.
Absolutely. Joe, being a father of five, what is the off season looking like for you?
Well, you know what? This is my second year of having every single one of those guys in school for a full day. So it's actually it's pretty
Well,
good at this. It's pretty good at this point. I think ever since I've had kids, I don't really sleep in at all anymore. It's like 6 o'clock wake ups all year, but you get used to that. And then, but by 8 o'clock right now, they're out the door. So as soon as they're out the door, I'm working out sometime in between 8:30 and 9:30. And whenever that is over, you can only do so much of that. Well, now I do boredom kind of hits like right around now. It's like 1 o'clock, and we have like 2.5 hours before we see their faces again. And it's like, all right, what can I do for the next 2.5 hours? So I'm usually looking at my wife, trying to kind of figure out if I can run some errands and really waste time running those errands. I'll jump in the car and listen to a podcast, and maybe take an hour to do something that only takes 15 minutes. So it's just trying to find that groove. Now that I'm back here, I've only been back here for 2 weeks, so it's getting back in touch with some of my friends that are back here, and seeing what we can do, what we can get into with each other, and kind of just trying to find out ways to have some fun. But right now, like I said, I can only work out for so long, so there's definitely a little bit of boredom that sets in during the day. But once they get home from school, at some point after dinner or right around dinner time, I'm usually running them around to some kind of practice, and then you do it all over again. So
At this point in your life and career, what does your training look like? Are you lifting weights, just bands, resistant training? What exactly are you focused on?
it's funny. I think as I've if I wasn't a professional athlete, I probably wouldn't have been somebody that you would find in the gym too often. And I hope that maybe somewhere along the way I would have found the value in that. But man, I have a trainer here locally, Brian Kane, who I found, man, 15 years ago. I've been with for 15 years. And honestly, like every year that goes by, I just enjoy being and doing that stuff more and more, that I find myself doing a little bit more and more. But it right at this time of the year, it's really just about getting back in the weight room. I will say that this season, with the Colts staff, I thought they had an unbelievable staff and the strength and in that weight room. It was probably the most inconsistent that I've stayed throughout the season. So I felt like I've gone into this off season as strong as I ever have. But yeah, I like to get back in there. And right now, at this point of the year, it's just weight room stuff. I try to give my arm a little bit of a break for a couple months. So it's getting back into that weight room and kind of, getting my body realigned so that, I can feel comfortable. I'm not throwing 1,000,000 pounds on my back and doing those kind of things, but I'm making sure that I can move the best I can and stay strong enough. Because listen, I do think we're in a time where you've realized that it doesn't matter that you're 40 years old. You can still build muscle and keep muscle on. It's not like 25, 30 years ago where you kind of thought that at some point that got worse. I mean, there's definitely a part of me that feels stronger than I ever have. I don't know if that's actually the reality of the situation. But the fact that I feel that way is definitely a good thing.
And how has your approach towards recovery changed from season 1 to now?
Wow. So listen, I just do more things. I think first of all, getting in the weight room is it is recovery. Having that constant movement and that constant strength and that constant adaptation, like that is recovery. But now that's another thing that like what I think just when you go down the path of just overall wellness and working out, you're just open to the ideas of doing more things. And I don't know if every single one of the things benefits you. Like, I don't really know if getting in the cold tub for 3 to 5 minutes a day or at least 5 days a week, I don't know if that benefits you that much, but there's something about getting in a routine and pushing yourself mentally to do things that you don't necessarily want to do all the time that just gives you that good start to your day and keeps you on the right track. Like I said, I don't know if every single thing that I do is, is changing my body and healing my body in a way that maybe I think it is. But I do think there's a lot of value just mentally in doing all these things. I think I always find it harder to eat really well during the season because I'm probably dealing with more stress. I can't work out as much as I work out of season. All these things, all the little things I've found for myself just play off of each other. It's way easier for me to eat healthy when I'm working out consistently. It's way easier for me to work out consistently when I'm eating healthy. And then all kinds of other things just come from that. And that's the beauty about my profession is, my life kind of revolves around those things. It's not like I got to wake up, go to work and try to find an hour and a half to work to fit in a workout. Like I can revolve my off season. I can revolve the whole day around working out, and then everything else just kind of comes off of that. So it's a lot of fun for me to kind of, explore different things, whether that's sauna, cold, finding a guy that's really good with your body, whether that's massage or some kind of chiropractor or whatever it may be. When I was in Cleveland, they had a red light bed. I was like, all right, why not? I'll try that. I don't know if it's doing anything, but it's a good little routine to get into. I think a lot of it is you think you're doing something good for yourself. And there's so much to that. When you think that you're doing something that helps you, it's helping you in some way. That's the one thing that I would say I've learned over the last few years.
How interesting. So you've been in the league now for 17 years, 40 years old, young kids. You have any plans to retire this year?
Not this year, no. My one son keeps joking. He wants me to play till I'm 50 because that puts him at like 20, 23, 24. He wants like a LeBron Bronny situation. I don't want to break his heart at this point, so I'll act like that can actually happen. But yeah, listen, I've played football for so long. People always ask me, like, dude, why are you still doing it? Or how long are you going to do it? I really don't have an answer for them. All I can say is that, like, I'm a football player. This is what I do. This is what I know. So I'm just going to do it. And I do feel there is a part of me that feels like, hey, listen, you're good at doing this. You're at least half decent at doing it. This is what you're supposed to do. So do it until you can't. Like, when you find something that you're good at, when you find something that you truly enjoy doing, like, why would you give that up? So it's kind of it's always a tough answer for me to answer that question when people ask me, because I really haven't given it much thought.
You're still moving pretty good too.
Yeah. That would Joe.
Well, for a big 6'6" guy and who's 40 years old, I can't complain.
Joe, besides the 2012 season, which was historic, obviously, no interceptions in the playoffs, is there any other season that stands out to you that was more memorable and rewarding than 2012?
I don't know if anything's more rewarding than probably winning the Super Bowl. But I had a really good experience in my 2014 season in Baltimore. We came back the year after we won the Super Bowl in 2013 and kind of had like I think we went 500. We were 8-8. We whatever it was. And then in 2014 we came back and we were another playoff team, and we went to the divisional. We won. We beat Pittsburgh in the wild card round. We went up to New England in the divisional round and had them on the ropes, and they ended up coming back and beating us. But I just had a really good experience that year. Really enjoyed being with the coaches that I was with, and had a lot of fun. And then not this past year, but 2 years ago, obviously that little half a year that I spent in Cleveland.
That was awesome.
And it's hard to beat that as well. Just because I wasn't anywhere for half the year. So the emotions that go along with that, and then all of a sudden kind of being thrust back in, and it really was a little bit different to have my family, which was now consisted of 5 kids, really for the first time being able to enjoy that with them. Definitely made a difference, and something about it. There was something about that made it more special. So
that's exciting.
What's it like though, like traveling? Like when you got to go from team to team, when you go from the Jets to the Eagles, back to the Jets, like you're moving the family with you, right? And you just renting something for the time being.
So I think it's you just have to man, I think I'm somebody that can pretty easily go with the flow, but when you involve a family, it is a little bit different, like so credit to them. I mean, I think a lot of credit goes to my wife, because she doesn't blink. She's just like, all right, well, let's talk about it. Let's decide what we think is best to do. And then once we make those decisions, we just do it, and it's honestly, it wasn't until this last year, when I was in New York, they did live at home, and that was only an hour and 20-minute commute. So I did have a place up there, but I was able to kind of, manipulate that a little bit. So I was home a little bit, and then I was up there a little bit. So they didn't actually have to come out of school or do any of those things. So it was relatively easy for them. But going out to Indy this year was the first time since 2019 that we had to think about uprooting everybody and what we wanted to do with that. And like I said, I got to say, like, my family was great. My kids definitely got to a point where they missed their friends, and missed home a little bit. But at the same time, like, I would say the people out there were great. My kids did an awesome job, I think, of like not blinking and going and integrating themselves into schools and making new friends and, joining sports out there and doing all those things. It's just part of what we do. I mean, people do more difficult things. I think there's ways to make it fun. And at the end of the day, like, not everything's perfect, and it's something that we're going to look back on, I think, in 10 years and definitely have fond memories of. And the other thing I've realized just from a family aspect is that your kids really do benefit from a little bit of change here and there. And I don't think, and just the social aspect of it, like maybe having a little bit of fear of jumping into a new school where you don't know anybody, but being able to get over that pretty quickly and meet new people. I just think that's a skill that I didn't have until I was probably 30 years old. So the fact that they can kind of get a little taste of that without even really knowing it, I think is pretty important.
And I'm very happy you mentioned change. What's it like when you're the guy in the building for 10 years and then one day the front office drafts someone named Lamar Jackson?
Yeah. So listen, it's tough when you go from being the guy to now, you're moving on. I think initially when all of a sudden you are moving on, like when I went to Denver, that was the move I made. So you go from Baltimore to Denver and you're starting games in Denver. I think there's something positive about that. You're like, okay, Baltimore did what they did, but now I got this new chapter and a lot of hope that comes along with that. So I think there was a lot of positivity with that. But things aren't always easy and things don't always go your way. So there's definitely been some times over the last few years, like I remember being in the car in New York and talking to my wife or my dad and being like, man, like, what am I doing? This is miserable. I'm not playing. Maybe I've played here and there and we aren't winning games. It's not a lot of fun. And it is a mental battle when you're not the guy that's out there every single Sunday, especially when you've had that taste for so long and you feel like you can do it. It is a battle mentally to stay engaged and to stay confident because you never know when your number is going to get called. And when you're not the guy that's out there every Sunday and you're not the guy that's taking every rep in practice, it's hard. It is hard to keep that same level of confidence that you need truly to play well. Yeah, listen, I've struggled with that over the last 5, 6, 7 years. But I think I've had little tastes and little glimpses of what staying focused can get you. And I think that, to be honest with you, yeah, I probably wouldn't have picked for it to go this way, but I think you do come out a little bit better and a little bit more hardened and a little bit more, capable than maybe you even thought you were. So, like I said earlier, I still love this game. I still love playing. So I'm just going to continue to have that mindset and hope that, I continue to get chances to go prove that I can play.
And if with that great season in Cleveland, was that a nice reminder that you still fucking got it?
Yeah, there's there was a couple things about that were a good reminder. First of all, not being anywhere for September, October, half of November, that was a good reminder. It wasn't like I was sitting at home saying, man, I'm so happy to be sitting at home. It wasn't like I was miserable, but you do watch those games and you're like, God damn it, man. Like, I just want to be out there. I want to be a part of something. So that was the first reminder, or at least sign that, like, okay, I want to be out there. And then being fortunate enough to be thrown into that situation and have the success that we had, man, it felt so good. It definitely reminds you of why you love this game. And I thought about some of those rides where I was in the car coming back from New York and like, man, what the hell am I even doing? And then you go out there and you get to play games again. And honestly, even in some of the games that I've lost, you get reminded, oh yeah, this is why I do it. Like I very early on told told a lot of people in my family, I really do feel for people that never get to experience like the locker room after a win in the NFL. It's such a special thing. Each and every win is so special, and you feel it in that locker room. It's such a special thing to go into that locker room every single time. I don't care how many times you've done it. Every single one is just like otherworldly in terms of how you're feeling. And maybe there was a certain point where you can kind of just take that for granted. But every now and then you get those, you go do it again and you win and you get reminded just how special of a feeling it is. There's really not much that beats that feeling. And I'm not just talking about a playoff win, a Super Bowl win. I'm talking about regular season wins. Just your regular old win that everybody just kind of takes for granted. When you get back in that locker room and you're hugging your teammates and everybody's got a smile on your face because you put in at least a whole week's of work to get to that point, it is just it's next level. And when you get to be a part of that after you hadn't been for a few months or even a few years, oh my God, it's very powerful what that can do for you.
Yeah, you're giving me goosebumps. Feel taking me back to like high school baseball.
Oh man, a couple of years ago, I was playing for New York, and we were playing Cleveland, and we were down 13 with like 2 minutes left, and I threw a touchdown that they kind of busted on, and then we got a 2 point. We got a onside kick and went down and scored, and we won the game. And I'm in the locker room and I'm jumping up and down with my teammates, and I think it's the highest my vertical's ever been. Was in that locker room after that game, and oh my, it was just it was like a next level high. And then like a day later, I'm sitting in the stands here in South Jersey for a 10-year-old fall ball game, and it like just hit me like, man, like how lucky. Like I'm 38 years old, and I just got to go. I'm a dad, and I just got to go play an NFL game and like have like the high of my life. That was one of those moments where it like hit me like, man, like you're pretty damn lucky that you get to be able to do those things. So
when you were in your 20s, did you feel those moments or not as powerfully?
No, I felt those moments, like those wins and stuff like that. Like I definitely felt how important they were. But I think as you get older, you have different things in your life that kind of remind you of that a little bit more often. And when you're young, you don't really care to go through trials and things like that put things in perspective. I don't think you realize it until you've gone through things in your life that do put things in perspective and allow you to enjoy things more. That's why when you're 60 years old, you can look back at your grandkids and your kids and teach them through your failures, because you're able to look at it in a different way, because you've usually used those failures to kind of breed growth and new successes, and you've seen the value in those. Whereas when you're 25 years old, you have no idea how to see value in those. You're just listening to people tell you, hey, there's value in this, there's value in this. No, there's not, until you can really, your 25-year-old self doesn't think there is, until you can kind of look back on that in the process. That's why it's so hard sometimes to get these things and really teach these things, is because you really have to, it's really just has to be, kind of organic and happen in your own life in order for you to see those things. And like I said, every now and then you get those reminders. For me, not being in football for a couple months was one of those reminders. For me, not getting to play just because I was a backup. Every time I go take that field, oh my gosh, this is a reminder of how important this is and how cool it is that I get to do this. Seeing the smiles on my kids' faces after they got to see me play was another reminder. There's all kinds of things, but
yeah. Well, as you reflect on the last 17 years, and clearly you could still sling the ball, would you be the player you became if you weren't going against guys like Ed Reed and Ray Lewis at practice every week?
Oh man, I think that's tough to say. I mean, I believe so, yeah, but like there was a lot of value in that. I always tell people, like, man, like the game training camps have changed. Like nowadays you might run 40 to 60 plays in a training camp practice. When I came into the league, I don't know what Baltimore does. Maybe they're still doing a little bit of this, but we would have over 100 plays scripted. So let's say we had 120 plays in a training camp practice, and I'm the starting quarterback, and I wasn't taking all of those, but I was taking more than half. So the amount of reps that you get and the amount of things that you have to go through mentally just in one day of training camp practice is pretty overwhelming. Not to mention that you have to do it versus Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, and those different, and Rex Ryan's defense my rookie year. So they're just throwing guys all over the place. You don't really know what you're looking at. So I don't know if you know how it works, but in an NFL, in a practice in general, you have a script. You have scripted periods of plays that you're going to run versus your defense. So let's say you have 4 10-play periods, just to keep it simple. Mm-hmm. Well, we know what plays we're running. Unless we have a call-it period. Hey, we've installed for a week straight now. This is the plays that we could call. We're going to do a call-it period. None of these plays are scripted. The defense can call what they're going to call. The offense can call whatever they want to call. But typically, the periods are scripted. You can look at all 40 plays and say, oh, I'm in for these 3 reps, and these are my 3 plays. And you can kind of, before you got to practice, you can just do that extra preparation of, all right, do I know what I'm doing here? Yeah, okay. If I get this, I get this. And you can kind of run yourself through all those situations. And there's value in that because it's just an extra way to prep. But when you run 120 plays, you have to let go of that crutch of looking at that script and being able and kind of using it to prep yourself for that practice. You have to be able to go out there and just trust that you were paying attention and that you studied the night before, and that yeah, they can run their whole playbook. I don't know what we're getting here. I don't know if this is the zone blitz day or if it's the cover zero day or what it is. I think there was so much value in me for a young player to kind of, because we ran so many plays. Like when you only have 20 plays that you're running in a day, you can study those 20 plays and know, like, all right, if I get this defense, I'm going to do this. If I get this defense, I'm going to do this. But when you have 75 to 80 plays that you're running, you can't look at all those plays and say, all right, if they do this, I'm going to do this. You have to get the play from the coach. And now you have to rely on your study habits to go out there and know what you're doing. And so for me, just mentally, to be able to let go of that crutch and then get to do it against some of the best who have ever done it, and gain confidence from that, and like prove to myself that, oh man, I can do this, and not only can I do this, I can do this versus the best guys that have been out there. I think that was huge for me. I also think it was huge just for those guys too, because, like, why would they want to trust a rookie quarterback to kind of try to lead them in the right direction? But the fact that I was able to stand in there and do it, I think probably gave them confidence and gave the team confidence. Like, okay, maybe he can do it for us. And I think those are huge things.
As a quarterback, I never played competitively football. I never played football. I played on the beach. You know what I mean?
Right,
I never played anywhere near your level. But how important is studying and watching film and being, 100% aware of what's happening with the playbook? Like, where does that what does the normal NFL fan like me or Evan not know about what goes into your preparation?
Well, listen, here's the thing. Anytime you know something really well, you can make it sound as difficult as possible. Yeah, and blow people's mind by like just reciting a play and things like that. I always try to keep it as simple as possible. Now, listen, I do tell young quarterbacks, like, I think people have different philosophies on this. I think it's more important to know the game plan inside and out as a young quarterback than I do to sit in a film room for who knows how many hours and watch film. I think it's more important for them to know the game plan, know all the checks, know why we're running these plays, and then just go out there and react to the defenses. I'm not saying don't do anything, but you have an idea of what coverages they run, what blitzes they run. If you master that game plan and master the details of it, you're going to know why we're running those plays and what we expect, and then if we don't get what we expect, what we're going to do. And if you're a young quarterback who's not prioritizing that, but you're prioritizing going and sitting in the film room for hours upon hours, and you really don't even know how to watch film yet and what to look for, I think sometimes you can overwhelm yourself. And I think I've kind of taken that throughout my career. I think it's more important to learn and master that game plan, and then rely on your coaches and film study for a little bit of details here and there. I think you can always overdo it. I think you can sit in that room for hours and just tell yourself that, yeah, this is preparing me. And as long as you're not wearing yourself out, and it is helping you like feel prepared on game day, then okay. But I do think there's a time where preparation can go a little bit too crazy. I think you have to keep it as simple, and you have to be confident that you are prepared and that you're doing the right things. And I think the biggest thing with that is just finding whatever your routine is. So, like I said, that doesn't have to be a million hours, but it does have to be a very locked in routine. On Monday, I'm doing this. On Tuesday, I'm doing this. On Wednesday, I'm doing this. And then don't get bored with doing those things over and over and over and over and over again. And I think if you can get on that kind of schedule where you don't get bored with just doing those little things over and over and over again, that's the best way to kind of, grow and grow and grow.
Joe, take us back to 2012 then, when you were going to the Super Bowl. You get the extra week to prepare. So then how many hours are you putting in of preparation?
I wish I could remember it. I wish I could remember what exactly we did. I'm pretty sure we you lock in your game plan this week. So because you get all the stuff sorted out where you're sitting in the team meeting. Hey, you're going to get this many tickets, and and then you have the ability to buy this many extra tickets. And I remember thinking, man, like, okay, I got a lot of this Super Bowl, man. I'm going to have a lot of people come down to this game. So like, you rely on people that you trust to kind of get that handled. But I feel like we did the bulk of the preparation this week. Like, hey, let's get our game plan in. Let's go practice it. I forget if we took days off or what. And then you get down to the Super Bowl, which ours was in New Orleans, and you got to be ready to adapt to things because things are going to be different than you're used to. And nowadays it's even more with all the media obligations. It wasn't quite the same back when I did it, even 12, 13 years ago. But you have to, I think, get the bulk of your preparation done now and then just go brush that up when you get down to the actual Super Bowl venue. I think the mistakes some people can make is overdoing it. Once again, you put in this game plan 2 weeks before, and now all of a sudden you have all this time to go back and watch more tape, and you start saying, well, wow, we can do this too, and we can do this too, and then we can do this too, and now you got all these ideas. And you lost focus on what the important things were, and you're trying to do all these different things because you saw so much. I think if you just rely on that initial instinct, I think that's going to get the most done for you. Well, I think the extra time can definitely hurt because you just feel like there's so much. Oh, we see so much more now. We can do so much more.
Something that's interesting about your guys' preparation against the 49ers was it was like two brothers going against each other. So you could speculate, oh, I know what he's going to call. They're both thinking, what does my brother usually call? Yeah. It's so different.
Well, I think the interesting thing about that game is listen, John and Jim have their differences, but at the same time, at the core, they believe in the same things. They believe so when you get against his team, I think situationally, you can probably start to anticipate what they're going to do and what they really believe in, just because at the core, they believe in the same things.
And you mentioned the too much time to prepare. I think we just saw that with the Lions against the Commanders with the week off, and then they lay an egg at home.
Oh, man, it's a shame. I mean, I think you see that in a lot of sports. You get that week off.
Yeah.
And if you can get through that initial week, if you can get that first win, okay, great. But man, it's harder than you think it is to come off of that bye, especially to play because no matter what, the team that you're playing just won a football game, a playoff game.
Yeah.
Like they've changed a little bit. They've just proven that they can to themselves that they can win a playoff game. And that's tough to go against. You see it in the playoffs in baseball as well. Like sometimes those wild card teams, all of a sudden they catch fire, and they weren't sitting at home for that whole round. I mean, those guys sit at home. They're used to playing every day. They sit at home for a week and a half while that little wild card round gets done, and the next thing you know, they get beat. There's something about that.
The same thing happened with all those NCAA bowl games. All four teams that had the bye,
same thing,
lost. They all lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as the Super Bowl Sunday, New Orleans, there going to be some nostalgia there?
Man, I think maybe. I don't know. I'd have to retouch base with you after I watch a little bit of it on TV. It's funny every now and then you'll walk into like a facility and they'll have Super Bowls playing, like because NFL Network or ESPN's on and they're playing games in the background. I still get nervous when I watch. Like I still get nervous if I ever I don't think I've ever watched like the game film of that game, and I don't know if I've ever truly watched like the whole TV copy either. But like you catch pieces of it here and there, and when I'll see the Niners inside the 10-yard line at the very end of that game, and I still get nervous. Like I don't know the outcome of the game. I still kind of put myself back on that bench on the sideline. And I was nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the Super Bowl. Are they going to score here? And like, I'm just counting down. Okay, we got them. We got through first down. Okay, we got through second down. No way we can stop them. All right, third down. Oh, here we go. And then fourth down happens, and you're like, and you're just like ecstatic, but I still kind of have those same emotions. So that it's possible that seeing that stadium and all that stuff, that it brings back some stuff. Because like I said, I watch a game that I know the outcome of and still can't help but feel a little bit nervous.
Joe, were any of your kids alive when you won the Super Bowl?
My oldest was alive. He was like, I don't know, he wasn't even a year old yet.
So you're gonna have to rewatch it with them pretty soon.
Yeah, yeah. I already did that a couple of years ago. You might have seen the story at some point. Like, oh my gosh, like I was playing for the Jets and I started a game and we got beat up. And my kids I came home and my kids were like, "You lost again. You guys stink. You know, you lost again." And that was the first time I was like, "What do you mean, bro?" Like I sat him on the floor and I actually like looked up a couple of my highlights and showed it to him. Like, yeah, like this is what we can do, you know. But funny. they were even then they were so young, like they were probably 7, you know, and 7 or 8. Like my oldest was probably 7 or 8. And it really hadn't clicked for them yet. You know, it hasn't been until the last probably 2 or 3 years where it's really clicked as to what I do for a living.
In 2012, when you guys won, is there a photo of you and your son on the field with the confetti flying down?
I don't know if there's a photo. There may be. I don't know if there's a photo with me and him. I know there's a photo somewhere, probably us at the parade in Baltimore a couple of days later. I know that for a fact, but I'm not sure if there was anything with me and him on the field. I honestly don't remember.
Did you go to Disney afterwards?
I did go to Disney. Yeah. It was a quick little trip in and out, but I went to Disney, then flew up to New York, did a little, you know, little talk show, and then flew back to Baltimore, and then woke up, went to the parade. And
how exciting!
I wish I remembered more of it. It feels like you look back at that time and everything kind of happened so fast that it just kind of is this time that I kind of forget most of it.
And Joe, if you watch the Aaron Rodgers documentary on Netflix, he talks about how after he won the Super Bowl MVP, his life kind of changed. Did you feel that with like a bunch of commercials and like was that something that you experienced?
I didn't get hit up with that, but I do think he also talked about kind of like, okay, like I've done it. Now what? Yeah. You know, this is what I've tried to do like my whole life. Now what? And I don't know if I even felt that, but I can kind of get that perspective because because you are excited in the moment, just like any other game. But then you wake up the next day and it's you know what I mean? Like it has changed. You've won the Super Bowl, but it already happened. And now it's like, okay, back to my normal life, you know? But I think like the thing I would say is like, I think that's good. Like, yeah, that's just how it is. That's what maybe you thought that everything in the world changes now and man, I do what I want to do. I'm going to feel so much different now. And then you realize like, no, I'm still the same person. I still feel exactly the same. All the other little things have changed, but I think I ultimately probably found some comfort in that. Like, okay, now let's get back to normal. It's just another day.
Well, how about, you know how hard it is to win one. When you see Patrick Mahomes at 28 years old, what goes through your head?
Yeah, it is pretty crazy because I do think there's a certain aspect of when you're in the moment and you're actually doing it. It feels a little bit easier than it actually is. Like the year we won, I forget all the hard stuff that happened that year. I just remember all the good stuff all of a sudden. And it felt a little like, damn, we can do that. All we got to do is get to the playoffs. And then like, dude, if you get the bye, you just got to win a game and then you're in a championship game. Then you just got to win one more and that's easy. You know, you can kind of get tricked, but then all of a sudden you get back to it. And that's why like, it's so the 17 game regular season, like that is hard just to to stay healthy, to stay consistent, to stay focused for that long of a period. Like, yeah, once you get to the playoffs, great. You just got to win a couple games. But it's so hard to win 11, 12, 13 games during the regular season and stay just that focused for that long of a period of time. And once you get back to it, you get reminded of that. So it is really impressive. They make it look easy, and it does kind of feel like a given, like, man, they're going to be in the Super Bowl again. But it really isn't that easy. I mean, that's the other thing about football is like, usually the best team in football does win, but because that's why they're the best team. Like they're more physical, they're just a little bit better. And it's not a lot, but they're a little bit better. But the unique thing about the NFL playoffs is it's one game. You know, like I think if the NFL was a series like every other sport, it would be very like the best team would probably win. There'd be very few upsets because football is that's just the way it is. But when there's one game, and you give one team a little glimmer of hope, anything can happen. So the fact that they've been able to just maintain that now for as long as they have is really impressive.
And a great example of that is the Giants beating the undefeated Patriots. But you mentioned that how brutal a 17-game season is. What do you think of an 18-game season?
Listen, I think we're all resistant to it for whatever reason. Yeah, I think the thing that goes into my mind is like, all right, when's it going to be 20 games? When's it going to be 22 games? There's got to be a point where it is too much. What is that point? I honestly think that as players, we adapt to whatever it is that you want to throw at us. Okay, 18 games, like we might complain about it, but as soon as it becomes a thing, all right, it's going to become the norm pretty quickly.
2 bye weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that was honestly, this is my idea. 2 bye weeks, but you still only play 17 games. Like, I have to like most of the revenue they're getting is from TV. So, I mean, as far as I know, I could be wrong here, but why can't we still play 17 games and just give 2 bye weeks? And you're still going to have a primetime 1 o'clock, primetime 4 o'clock, primetime 8:30, primetime Monday night, primetime Thursday night. Yeah. You can still have all of those games. And are all the other local games that important? Like, I feel like you can still play 17 games. And if you really want to just stretch the season out to be longer and you want to have more weeks where the games are on TV, give everybody 2 bye weeks. And there's still there's a game for 19 weeks instead of 18 weeks. I mean, you can do that as long as you want to, I think, and make more money. I'd have to see like what the actual advantages of everybody playing that extra 18th game, because you're still, if 18 games, 2 bye weeks, and now that's 19 weeks of football. But you can get that without, my point is you can get that without actually adding that game to a certain, I guess that's 20 weeks of football. So they're still adding a week. But I think there's probably creative ways that could do that without continuing to add games to the season. And like I said, listen, we could probably adapt and play 18 games, but at what point do they stop? At what point is it 19, 20? Because they used to play 14. And then it went to 16, and now it's 17. And, I don't think we want to get to the point where we're playing like 24 regular season games in 25 years from now, but you never know.
Well, and Joe, what I find so interesting is that all like the MLB traditionalists say you can't compare these records to that records if you have less than 162, but no one bitches about adding more games and comparing historic figures with past NFL records to now. So it's interesting.
It is what it is. I mean, listen, Jim Brown played in a time where he didn't play 16 games, but I think everybody understands that. Records are what they are. They're meant to be broken. They really are. You have to compare the record to what it was in the time. And then everything that comes after that, like, it's cool to break those things, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's an apples to apples comparison. It can be. We can all understand that it's different. I mean, the MLB didn't always play 162 games either, did they? I think they played less too at some point. Like, there's different things. I think we can all end up wrapping our head around that. I think there are the traditionalists and all those things. But I think everybody at the end of the day ends up wrapping their heads around that. Like, look, we have 7 teams in the playoffs now for football. I think it's changed things a little bit. And I think and they've found a way to do that without extending the playoffs at all. So I think they've honestly done a good job. And what it's done is it's kept that last wild card game in play until the last week of the season. Whereas before, if there were 6 teams, sometimes those things would be set a little bit earlier than the last week of the season. But now it seemed to keep interest throughout the league all the way up until that week 18, because they've added that last wild card spot. So I think there's always cool and creative ways that, we can make things better. And I think eventually, I think some people will be resistant to those things, but overall they'll end up getting over it.
And Joe, as the game keeps evolving and you got now young kids who are probably getting into football as well, what message do you have for these young guys who want to go make it in the NFL?
Man, a message to young guys. I think the biggest thing now is that everybody starts all these sports from such a young age. And some kids excel when they're 8, some kids excel when they're 9, 10, 11, 12. I think for some of those kids, when you're not the kid that's excelling right away, that doesn't mean to stop doing it. You know, if you love the game, you got to stick with what you're doing and find a little process to get better and better and better. There's so many people, there's so many players that are in the league that weren't the guy when they were 10, 11, 12 years old. Even in high school, they weren't the guy. And all of a sudden, a transformation happened and they became super capable and one of the best players ever. So I would just say stick with it. If you love the game, stick with it. And for all the people that want to tell you that you can't be a professional athlete, well, you can. And it just takes a little bit of work. Obviously, it takes a little bit of skill and talent. But if you're willing to work at it, you will give yourself a chance to do it. It is not as much of a, I know the percentages are small, but it's not as far off as you think it is. You're capable of getting it done if you're committed to it. So just stay committed.
Nice. Joe, February 9th, Super Bowl Sunday, Eagles, Chiefs, round 2. What's your final score prediction?
Oh, man. Let's say Chiefs 29, Eagles 27.
Oh, good game.
Yeah.
All right. Joe Flacco, appreciate you very much, man. Thanks for joining our show.
All right, guys. I appreciate it.
It's been a blast.